I'm sorry if anyone finds that I suck at telling this story. Third time trying to tell it, had to restart because my text got randomly deleted. Then the second time I posted before I was even done. Third time hopefully is the charm, as I'm over retyping this story. So I'll post about gas stations at night. I travel alone often, so I've had my fair share of creepy encounters. This is the one that stands out most as it was creepiest. Years ago, I was on my way to Minneapolis, Minnesota, from bumfuck Egypt, Montana. I was making the trip alone. I drove as much as I could handle, stopping only for gas and bathroom breaks. It was late at night and I decided to call it quits when I stopped in this little nothing town called Rothsay. I checked into this little motel to regroup for the night and decided to bebop on over to this 24-hour truck stop for some food. It wasn't far, so I grabbed my coat out of my car and went over on foot. So some background about me. I have always been super cautious about stranger danger. My mom was into true crime and drilled it into me that any situation could be dangerous. So I need to stay vigilant and be prepared in case of any sort of altercation with a creep. I always watch the people around me when I'm out and I pay attention to what's going on. When this happened, I had pepper spray clipped to the inside breast pocket of my leather coat and my stun gun, machete, and baton in the car, just in case stuff like this incident were to ever go south. I had also 2 gas cans, jumper cables, vehicle fluids, etc. in my car in case of emergency. I felt okay with being by myself because of all this. To anyone who saw me, I was an 18-year-old female, traveling by myself in a dumpy 02 Ford Vic with out-of-state plates. And if they bother to look into it specifically with a county number of a town with a population of 600 to 700, so to the creeps with bad intentions, I obviously have potential of being a vulnerable target on which to pull some shit. I still was friendly with strangers and willing to help anyone in need, but this incident made me a bit leery about it from then on. I really feel like something awful would have went down if I had not seen the red flags and questioned the situation. I stopped putting myself out there like this after it happened. Anyway, while I was walking to that truck stop, I noticed a parked car with the door opened and some dude just half sitting in it, smoking a cigarette and messing with stuff in the car. I took note because he just looked at me and kind of put off sketchy vibes. A lady maybe 30 years old comes out of the truck stops and approaches me. She was a little off, like I'm fairly sure she was an addict and was high at the time. I was an addict once and do not look down on them, so I greeted her kindly when she walked up to me and she said, "I'm stranded here and need help. My car just died. I think I ran out of gas." So I told her I'd be glad to help her and offered to put 25 in the tank, and she said the car wasn't here, it had died on the road. It was like, oh, no problem. I always keep gas cans and jumper cables in case of something like this, so no worries. I could give her one of my gas cans and take gas back to it. She was like, "Can I get a ride to my car?" So I asked where it was and she said, "Oh, not that far, I suppose. Would just be nice to get a ride. Will you take me to my car?" I told her I was actually about to head into this truck stop to get something to eat just now, but it would be no problem at all to let her take a gas can. She floundered and changed it to, "Well, I'm not sure if it's out of gas. It could have just died because of a bad battery. You said you had cable, so would you go try to jumpstart my car?" Odd thing is, the whole time I was talking to her, she kept glancing over at the dude in the car. She seemed insistent that I get in my car and take her somewhere. These things clicked, alarms went off in my mind, and I knew there was no way in hell I was giving this woman a ride anywhere. Like so, many red flags, and at this point, I felt like it was some sort of scam to maybe rob me or steal my car, or something of that sort, just due to how sketchy she was being. And because she kept looking over at the guy in the car throughout this, and I did wonder though, if maybe she was afraid of the man for some reason, maybe in a bad relationship and trying to get away from him. I made one last ditch attempt on the off chance she really did need help, and I told her I'd let her use my phone if she wanted to call someone, but I wasn't going to give her a ride, with my excuse being I just driven all the way from 2 states over and was going inside to get food. Honestly, I just felt weird about the whole thing and didn't want to give her what she wanted. She 180'd so damn fast. She started screaming and swearing at me, saying all kinds of terrible stuff, making a huge scene. So I threw up my hands and said, "Fine, I'm sorry, I can't help you," and I walked away from her and went inside the truck stop. The woman hung around the lot a few minutes, and as I was eating my caramel roll, I saw her leaving the lot with the man who had been sitting in the car smoking a cigarette. I was certain that it was the ruse, because why bother if she could have just went with him? I mentioned it to the lady inside, and she said she saw the strange lady show up there with the man she left with, and I thought it was also super creepy, unsettling, and it was very likely that they had bad intentions. I genuinely felt like she was right, and my gut feeling was right. I feel like the point was for the strange woman to talk me into giving her a ride and direct me somewhere, and for the man to follow in his car for evil reasons. I've had other stuff like this happen when I'm traveling, but nothing extremely off-putting and straight up creepy as at that time I stopped in Rothsay. My father's and mother's half-sister's son. She had 2 half-sisters. This one was the son of the elder one, who also had a daughter. Basically my father's half-cousin, if you can call him that. Used to act so fudging innocent and friendly. He acted like an uncle we all want to have, all sunshine and rainbows and love. I later come to know that his father, my grandma's brother-in-law, was a molester too, and he had molested my mom in the past. It started when I was 9, and we visited my father's aunt's house. He still lives there, and he used to brush himself on me like all the time. I'm a kind of person who hates physical affection. Even a hug or a kiss on the cheek from my parents or older sister or anyone makes me uncomfortable. I didn't like it, but being a kid, couldn't really understand the difference between good touch and bad touch. We were taught about it when we were 11, a few months before the main incident happened. The worst part is, his is so bad that he molested the daughter of the man who got him his job. My father wasted thousands of dollars worth of rupees on him just to get him his government job. My grandma's whole extended family of 12 people visited us during a summer for an afternoon 5 years ago, when I was 11. I am 16 now, was a minor, still am. He asked me if I could click his pictures in the terrace against the view of the mountains that our house looks over, so that he could post them on his Facebook account. We had a great time clicking pictures and making jokes, etc. When he had suddenly cornered me, I really didn't want to go over the explicit details. It was and still very traumatic. I knew that what was happening, and I pushed him over slightly and told him I was going to get some water for myself. I went down and told my mother and sister, who was 6 years older than me, and burst out crying, fearing they would blame me for it. They didn't, and they were very on him. To not cause further drama in front of the guest, they kept quiet and didn't tell my father immediately. That SOB had to leave early and had the audacity to pay me and my sister cash as a so-called uncle before leaving. I didn't leave my room that afternoon and only came out to eat when they had left for the market in the evening. I dragged my father, who now knew, out into the mall so as to avoid all of them. They all came back a few hours later to leave again, finally. And I didn't come out all night and cry a river. After they all left, my grandma left with them too for a few days. My father made the call to him and broke down into the dirtiest slangs and abuses that you can imagine in front of all three of us. I, my mom, and my sister. I was shaking and crying again. My father called my grandma and told her, who in turn told her younger half-sister, her own brothers, and her whole family. She refrained from telling his mother and her family just to be kind or whatever boomer shit. And yes, they weren't allowed to visit our home ever again. I am pretty sure I or my mother, sister or father, whoever sees him next, are gonna kill him. Please refrain from judging me in any way. I was a kid. I was in a very bad place after this incident. I wish I could go to therapy, but I couldn't open up to anyone. This is the first time I am opening up to strangers who I am perfectly sure will judge me less than my friends would if they had came to know. My house was broken into when I was 13. I grew up in a nice little suburban area. I actually lived at the very end of a large cul-de-sac. My mom worked a 9 to 5, so she was always home shortly after I got home from school. My dad was medically retired from the military, but he still liked to work. He would do random small general contractor jobs, so his work schedule was always random. Anyway, he was working on a house in a neighborhood close to ours. My bus route wouldn't take me directly to my house, so I would have to walk a bit. Sometime, I don't know when, I'm guessing this guy saw me walking home. On a Tuesday, I saw a red SUV parked on the side of the road about 4 houses down from mine. I never thought anything about it. Looking back, I remember seeing it several times parked in that general area after that Tuesday. Anyhow, one day, walking home, the SUV was there. Didn't think anything of it per usual. Got home and went through our side door. Dropped my backpack and went in the kitchen to grab snacks. My dad called the house phone asking if I was home, and I obviously was. He had forgot his notebook and wanted me to grab it for him. So I hung up and ran up the stairs to get it for him. He was going to meet me in the driveway. I heard the door from the garage open up. Thinking it was my dad, I yelled that I was getting it. I heard the footsteps, and I could tell it wasn't him, so I sprinted downstairs and opened the front door running outside. Luckily, I saw my dad's truck, and he could tell something was wrong. I told him someone was in the house. He stopped the truck and gave me his cell phone to call 911. He went inside. I'm guessing I scared the guy when I ran because he ran too. My dad ended up seeing him run and saw his face. He couldn't catch him due to his injuries. Cops come, we give our statements, etc. Anyhow, to make a long story shorter, they ended up catching him 20 or 30 minutes later. My dad gave a positive ID. They took him in and ended up towing the SUV. In his bag that he was carrying, he had a gun and zip ties. He had a bunch of other stuff in his SUV. We are pretty sure he was there to take me. I don't know what would have happened if my dad hadn't forgot his notebook. At the time, I was 14. This was 4 years ago and still gives me the chills. My house is in a very safe area. My town was ranked top 50th places in the United States, so scary things don't happen often. The road I lived on ran parallel to the interstate, and at one end of the street ended into a highway. The highway is about 4/10 of a mile from my house, with several gas stations and a Dollar General where my road met the highway. Since the area was safe, my parents didn't mind if I walked to the gas station or the Dollar General to grab a snack from time to time. One day I wanted Dr. Pepper, so I walked to the gas station to get me one. All was fine till I started heading back. I got close to halfway up the road, and this red truck drove by me. As he drove by me, I noticed the man that was driving was looking at me. I didn't think much about it until he turned around and drove by me again, but slower. All the while staring at me, I saw him turn around yet again and started heading for me. When he drove up to me, he almost came to the complete stop and started opening his door. As a stupid 14-year-old, I didn't know what to do. Before he could step out of the car, just by luck, a car pulled out behind him, which forced him to leave. I started walking again, but when I looked back, I saw him turning around again. I could see my house, but I didn't have time to make it. So I ran as fast as I could behind my neighbor's house, just barely out of sight. I hopped the fence into my backyard and ran into my house, scared for my life. I forgot to mention I was home alone. As soon as I entered my house, I ran to the window, looking at the street. What I saw was a red truck going so slow in front of my house. It almost looked like he was stopped. He was looking at me. After what felt like an eternity, he passed my house and turned around one last time to try to find me, but eventually drove off and I never saw him again. As a 14-year-old boy, I thought this only happened to little kids and girls, but I was wrong. What made me post this story is that I saw a red truck today that was identical to this man's truck. I work at a big chain dollar store, and I was out behind the store taking out all the cardboard and garbage. We usually always have a person doing this with us, and today I was lucky enough to have someone with me. But that's not always the case. So we're there throwing garbage into the bin when a guy comes up to us from the tracks and implies that we're in high school. We both look at each other and then back to him, and I answer, no, we're adults. He looked surprised and talked about having a knack for seeing these kinds of things. We both assure him that we were adults, and he kind of shuffles off. Now I had my box cutter in my hand, ready to use it if this guy tried anything. But he left. My coworker was asking me why he was asking about us being in high school, and I just turned to her and said, "We can't let any of the other girls do this alone anymore.